Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the second of today's streams in our dedicated field service news channel that is here to offer support and guidance for field service organizations during the COVID-19 pandemic. For those of you who weren't able to join us earlier on today, I hosted a great session with Jan van Ven, who has been working with a number of different organizations that were able to share some best practices and some really good learnings on how some organizations that Jan's been working with are adapting. There were some real great insights to there. So if you haven't visited that, there will be links later on to check that stream out. Today's stream, or this afternoon stream rather, I'm joined by two people that I think are going to have an awful lot of value for the field service industry at the moment. I'm joined by Gary York, who is the CEO of Help Lightning, and Evans Manolis at Help Lightning as well. And I mean, just to put this into context, we at Field Service News have been talking about the importance of augmented reality and its place, the benefits of remote assistance for a long time. I've been interacting with the team at Help Lightning since we started that conversation. I think Evans and I seem to bump into each other at various pockets of the world and have a quick chat, maybe over a coffee, sometimes a beer, and try and learn how this rapidly evolving space has come together. Obviously now, remote assistance, augmented reality, it's no longer at the moment just a nice to have. It's now become something of a must have as we all try and adjust, as we all try and shift into this new way of working during this period of lockdown that we're seeing across the globe. So I hosted a emergency symposium on Friday. Gary was very kind enough to join me on that and offer some helicopter views on the guidance. But I asked Gary, and then also Evans, who's been working probably more than anybody else in this space in terms of actually working with field service organizations on a day-to-day basis, for some more further nuance into actually let's get beyond the kind of the 101 as well. So both have very kindly agreed to drop everything. Obviously, you can imagine just how busy these guys are at the moment, to join me on this session and to share this discussion with you all as well. Gary, Evans, first of all, on behalf of everyone logged in and myself, thank you very much for joining us. I'd like to split this session, if I may, guys, into two kind of tiers, because I know there's a couple of different, as I mentioned there in the introduction, there's a couple of different parts to this conversation. First of all, there's those organizations that are new to remote assistance. And I want to do a bit of a 101, really. And I think, Gary, let's kind of utilize your knowledge for that side of things. And let's kind of get to grips with some of the fundamental questions, especially the practical questions, the technology-based questions that a lot of people will have at the moment. And then in the second part of this conversation, Evans, I'll be turning to yourself. And I'd like to, basically, I'm going to hand the torch over to you a little bit in that, because that's where I put my hand up and say, look, I know a surface level about this amount. I've been writing about it a lot, but you know, the reason I really wanted you on this call is I don't know anybody else that's been working so closely with so many organizations. So in the second part, we'll turn it to you. At the same time, everybody on the call, I've run a couple of these calls now, and what we've found is that the best way to do the Q&As is to keep the questions coming constantly. So if you can, any questions you've got, please do just pop them into, there's a questions panel on the side. It may be at the top, it may be at the side, depending on how you got your GoToWebinar set up. But keep those questions coming through. As and when they come through, I will be constantly looking across to that and taking those, and I'll put those to both Evans and Gary at the same time, and we'll just kind of have it as an organic conversation. Okay, so to begin, Gary, let's start with the basics. I mean, remote assistance. Talk us from, you know, as if we've no idea of what this concept is, because right now a lot of us are still adapting rapidly. We're in rapid recovery, rapid development. Everyone's talking about remote assistance. Maybe you just give us the helicopter view to start, that kind of reiterating a little bit what we discussed on Friday.
Great, thank you, Chris. Appreciate the opportunity to be here. This is such a critical time for so many businesses, and as they're trying to struggle to find ways to deliver their services, to keep people in their jobs, to deliver their services, many of which are mission critical services. So we're it's an exciting time for us having a remote expertise capability to be able to find ways to serve our customers and try to make a difference in bending the curve on both the coronavirus as well as on the economic loss that's facing us. So let me talk a little bit about what is remote assistance, and then maybe more narrowly what I would call remote expertise. So a lot of people will, when you Google search remote assistance, a lot of times you'll come up with a lot of tools that have existed for 10 years or more that allow you to kind of remotely call into a piece of electronic equipment and be able to do command and control over a computer and a screen. And so broadly, a lot of people would say that's that is remote assistance, or it's certainly a type of remote assistance. And as more people are putting equipment onto networks, they sell the equipment and it's got the kind of it's remotely connected, so it maybe have a kind of the Internet of Things connectivity, then they can actually see their equipment in the field and maybe log in and work with it and see it and things of that sort. And that's really is a critical piece of service operations for many businesses nowadays, and they're going more and more toward that Internet of Things model where they can actually have some level of command and control over their equipment electronically. Unfortunately, we live in a physical world, and in that physical world, there are a lot of things that can't be done electronically. And that's where what we would call remote expertise comes in. So remote expertise is a type of remote assistance, but it's actually dealing with the physical world. So in the physical world where you need to tweak something, tune something, install something, replace something, or even see something that is not Internet of Things connected. So you may have 100,000 pieces of equipment in the field, and only 10,000 of them are connected remotely. A lot of our customers tell us that in hospitals, the hospital IT staff won't let them connect their equipment to be remotely accessible. And so as you overcome obstacles of that sort, you've got to find other ways to be able to provide service in those environments where you have a physical problem, or maybe it's an electronic problem, but you can't connect to the network to have it remotely accessible. So remote expertise is really about handling those physical problems where most of these solutions are a video-based solution. So you can use a mobile device like you already have in your hand, and that mobile device allows you to connect with a video session to an expert remotely. That expert can then guide you through that process. Now, obviously, remote expertise is a lot more than just Skype or FaceTime. And in fact, most of these tools have additional capabilities. The first is kind of a telestration capability where the expert or the person in the field can actually mark on the screen and use telestration to say, I'm interested in looking over here, or this is the first knob you're going to turn, and those kind of things. So that telestration capability is critical. And that really is the first step into this augmented reality world that you mentioned when you started. So by augmenting the display on both sides for the expert and the person in the field, you're able to say, this is the first step, this is the second step, this is the third step, using some sort of drawing tools on the screen. Beyond that, though, we also have a merged capability we call merged reality. And the idea of merged reality is that the expert actually has a camera too. And the expert can use their camera to actually merge their video field of view for their camera with the field of view out in the field, looking at the problem domain. So by merging those two video screens, the expert can actually reach in and would make gestures to show the person in the field what they're trying to do. This helps overcome language barriers, help overcome technical language barriers, as well as foreign language barriers. So this is a new type of augmented reality that we've introduced. We call merged reality.
That's very interesting, especially if you think even more so perhaps over here in Europe, where we're a similar size and similar population in broad strokes as the entirety of the United States. We have massive challenge in the fact that we have 27 odd different languages, and actually getting the hands on in Luxembourg, let's say, might not be a challenge. We can get somebody there that can for the want of a better word, use the wrench. Obviously, I mean, it's more technical, but you understand where I'm coming from that. But actually getting that expertise in, that's one thing that we can do perhaps with, a phone call. We could do that. We can talk somebody through it, but actually being able to show them physically, like you say, that kind of helps overcome language barriers, which is quite an important factor with dealing with at the moment. I also, something that comes to mind now, I remember, I think it was an MIT study, but there was something along the lines that by simply showing somebody it's this knob here and you turn it this way, and that physical way of showing it, I think we're something like 7 times more likely to get that right on the first time than if you say, do you see the dial? Now turn it 100. There's a lot of fallibility in language, essentially. So it's interesting you say that.
Right.
I've just
Yeah,
had,
there have been
sorry, yeah.
that's a great point. There have been a lot of scientific studies over many years that show that showing somebody how to solve a problem is much, much better than just trying to talk them through it. And in fact, we've proven that in addition to that this merge reality capability solves a whole new class of problems that can't be solved remotely in other ways using video or video with telestration.
Okay, yeah, no, okay. What I will do on the follow-up on this as well, obviously we'll be sending this recording out so everyone's got it for posterity to go back. We'll also send out some links, and there's some links on fieldservicenews.com that kind of cover some of those academic pieces as well, so you've got a bit of a knowledge resource there. One of the things I wanted to ask you, and we've had a question that's come in that fits quite, dovetails quite nicely with one of the things I wanted to ask. I wanted to ask around the type of field service organizations that are utilizing these kind of tools. But I've also had a question in from Nesta Novio. Thank you, Nesta, which has asked quite a specific question, but I think we can broaden it out. Nesta asks, have you assisted the Veterans Administration hospitals with their constricted IT connectivity? I think we can broaden that out to a lot of the challenges that those in medtech and the medical space have, in terms of there can be quite rigid firewalls, and there can be challenges, especially we have it here with the various pockets of the NHS in the UK. I know with the various clinics in the US, it can be a challenge. Are there companies in that sphere that are utilizing these kind of tools that you're working with? And what other kind of industries are utilizing these technologies at the minute? Is it geared towards specific industries, or is it something that can be opened out?
Well, in general, I think field service is a fantastic market for remote expertise in general, because you are dealing with physical products, whether it's an electronic product or manufacturing product, a medical device used in medical settings. You did ask about how about connectivity, and obviously if you're streaming video, you do need some type of connectivity. We've applied. Let me talk about the connectivity piece first. Oftentimes, if you're working with solving a mission critical problem for a facility, you can get permission to get onto their wireless network in order to have high bandwidth communication, especially if you arrange it in advance. So it may be something that your field tech team, your service team may need to work out in advance in order to make sure that you have access to these technologies when you need them. However, the technology also runs fine over wireless networks, cellular networks, 4G networks and such. So if you don't have access using Wi-Fi, then you can use cellular networks. Some of our customers even take in these MiFi devices, these dedicated devices that allow them to set up a local network and use it temporarily. We actually have one customer who's actually adding a wireless hotspot to their equipment that they market and sell to their customers, so that it can be turned on when you're in diagnostic mode. So in other words, the tech goes in, they turn on the wireless network temporarily and use it for the inspection, maintenance, repair, and then they can turn it off when they leave, in order to, which is actually a better approach for a lot of IT organizations. They may allow you on for a short period, they just don't want you on 24/7 in some cases.
Yeah, okay, yeah, no, it's interesting, some of these solutions that are coming in, and it's things like that those mobile hotspots, that with some kind of good communication in environments where there are more stringent firewalls and more stringent security, that could be a really nice way to deal with it. So it's good to see that there are solutions that are being put in place. I think that's a very valuable bit of insight there. Just to stay on that trend a little bit longer, Julie Wood has asked, are you finding that job coaches are using this kind of remote training? I think, again, let's widen that out. Is this being used as a tool for training at the moment? Because one of the things that came up in the conversation with Jan earlier on today was that some of the organizations he's working with are not only moving engineers who aren't able to get out because they're in self-isolation to more desk-based roles, but obviously at home. He's seen some organizations do the opposite of that, where there are people that are able to get out that are just not necessarily field engineers, but people that have a skill set that can be applied to that, maybe work in the depot, the repair depot, the maintenance depot, etc., and getting those out on the field. Of course, the one thing they don't have is that experience dialed in. But again, something like these tools that could perhaps open up to some training, either pre-job or also, of course, on the job. But are you seeing people doing any training and development around that?
Yeah, that's a great question. We definitely are seeing people use remote expertise as a on-the-job training model. So we have customers who previously, one customer previously they would hire new field technicians, which are in short supply right now. In the US, there are not as many people want to go into field tech jobs, and so there is a shortage. But this company previously would train their technicians for 4 months, and then they'd put them out in the field with another technician for an additional period in order to continue on the job training. Now they've shortened that training to 6 weeks to get the basics in. Then they use Help Lightning in order to support people for the more complex cases they run across with the remote expert to guide them through continued on the job training. So that certainly is one model that we've seen. I think also in the training itself, we have also seen that there are times where you want to train somebody, but instead of flying the expert across the country to the training site, you could actually provide remote assistance in guiding people through very technical and detailed non-classroom based training, where they a lot of training for these equipment providers, where they'll have the actual equipment at the training center and they'll be able to guide somebody through the process of training using the equipment prior to going out in the field. So we've seen it both to support classroom training, but also even more so supporting on-the-job training for people who are relatively new and haven't seen the older equipment that may be out in the field.
Is there just to build on that a little bit, Gary? Is there the potential to utilize those training calls and record them and utilize them both on the field and moving out, and kind of utilize them in building out knowledge banks, etc.? Because again, the more digital resources we can put in front of people at the moment, the more ability we can give them to access the information to keep functioning, the better. Is that something that's feasible?
That's a great point, Chris. Oftentimes these sessions can be recorded, and then they can be curated, and you pull out the ones that are the most interesting and make them available as kind of a self-help platform. So many companies will have a content management system that they use for materials which are available to their techs, and then you can search to find one that's appropriate to your situation, and maybe watch a recorded video instead of and be able to get by with self-help. Those are obviously beneficial as an additional training tool and helping technicians who may not need remote assistance. However, that does extend the time for problem resolution. So in critical cases, it may be better to go ahead and get somebody on the line, work through the problem, rather than learning while the customer is down.
Yeah. I suppose as well, as we're seeing with many of these the challenges that come around from the COVID-19 pandemic. Something I mentioned, I think on Friday, I certainly mentioned it earlier, is what we see as best practice is now becoming essential. So, we want to make sure that the first time fix rates, which has always been the holy grail in field service, they now need to be that. We need our technician utilization rates. Again, one of the big KPIs that's measured. And I've done quite a lot of research on the KPIs that have been measured only just at the end of last year. So I know where these numbers are, and it's first time fixed rates, tech utilization as well. One thing that we're coming to, and of course to kind of feed off of that is the old mantra again. I keep coming back to foundational points on these calls. There's the old adage that you do the truck roll, and you do one truck roll, you've broken even. You do two truck rolls or whatever beyond, then you're losing money. And that fits in with a question that I've got from Lynn Wise here. Lynn says, we are a customer care remote call center for the trades today. We would like to know how to leverage tools such as helplining for customer care as a tier 1 before they go to the truck roll. Is that something you see quite a lot? Basically, it becomes an additional layer of service rather than just something that we've added in to kind of help the engineer. It's kind of putting it in the hands of the end user and the customers, or giving it as a direct solution there. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, thank you, Lynn, for the question. That's a fantastic segue into really talking about the two use cases that are the biggest benefits for remote expertise. The first is exactly that use case where your customer calls you into your technical support center and they need help. And if you can solve their problem remotely without requiring a dispatch, then everybody wins. The customer's up sooner. They're delighted because they were expecting to have to wait a day or so for somebody to arrive to fix it. And you've saved a truck roll, especially in times when you're maybe a shortage of technicians, or especially now when sending a tech on site could risk spreading the COVID virus. And so I think right now there's even an enhanced need for solving more problems using remote expertise in your technical support center. We're seeing this happen more and more. In fact, in many cases, we're being told that field techs can't travel, or they're being denied access when they arrive on site, or they're being asked to sign a waiver when they arrive on site. And when you're talking about the B2C, where you're working with consumers, a lot of consumers are concerned about allowing a field tech into their home when they're also concerned about spreading the virus to their family and children. So this is really a critical point that now previously businesses may have said, these 10 problems can be solved remotely, but these other 20, we need to go on site. Now they're shifting those dynamics and they're saying, can we really solve maybe 15 or 20 of those problems remotely now that we're in this time of crisis, and increase the number of problems that can be resolved with using the smart hands of the consumer or of an employee of the company to be able to be the smart hands, guide them through and resolve the problems remotely. This is becoming even more prevalent now that you have advanced tools like remote expertise, where you can actually show the person what to do. The customer isn't going to know what the pump is, or they're not going to know what the valve, which valve to turn. But if you can actually show them saying, this valve, you need to turn a quarter of a turn counterclockwise, then you can guide them through the process of doing something that may be a little bit more complex, but still safe for potentially getting them back up and running and showing them how to resume normal operations during these difficult times.
Yeah, I think it's and I'm just looking at the questions there. There's a question that's coming from Christian. Christian, your surname is cut off by my restricted panel, so I'll just say Christian because I don't want to get your surname wrong, and I've only got half of it. So Christian, thank you for the question. I think we've just kind of covered that. So let me know again, if that's covered your question. That's great, because Christian asked, how do we motivate the user to load the app to use Help Lightning? Why not use chatter tools like WhatsApp? And again, I think it's these tools, these fundamental tools like WhatsApp, or even going that layer beyond and FaceTime or Skype, or whichever video conference it is, etc. They are very, very useful. There's no denying that. But it's in this situation, and from a best practice situation outside of the kind of the situation we find ourselves in now, again, it's all about getting people back up and running as quickly as possible. I think now, I've said a number of times during these sessions across the last couple of days, everything that is best practice that people like me have been talking about for the last couple of years, in terms of this is the things that we should be doing. These are the things that I've been reporting on. There's just a magnifying glass on them now. The good news is that the tools are here, and I think the move towards, look, we will get you up and running quicker, that hopefully should be the quickest and simplest, easiest way to get that message across to somebody that pushes back on that. But Christian, I hope that's answered that kind of question. Gary, I'd like to just kind of get another, like, your insight on Christian's question there as well. But yeah, hopefully that's my 2 pence worth. But let me pass back across to the expert. Gary, what were your thoughts on that? Do you think that is it? It's getting them back up and running as quick as possible, and these tools will do it better than anything else that's there?
Well, certainly there is the idea of using a tool that's designed for remote expertise rather than sharing videos of with your grandkids. So there is a substantial difference in the quality of those tools. In addition, if you're using a free tool, it really can't be managed. If you're a professional service organization, one of your mantras is probably what gets measured gets done. We need to be able to in order to improve, we need to be able to know what's actually going on. If you're using free tools, you have no way of measuring and monitoring what's going on with those tools in order to work on your continuous improvement process. But I will say that Help Lightning and some of the other leaders in this market have a way of using the technology without downloading an app. So we actually have an appless model where I can send a consumer a link. They click on that link, and within seconds, it calls back. It calls the expert or the group of experts who can handle your problem. One of them will answer you immediately in a video-based call inside your browser instead of having to download an app, and then you can go about resolving the problem. So I think that is the state of the art now, is that you don't need to download an app. Instead, you can use it directly in a browser using through an SMS or email-based link.
No, that's very interesting. I wasn't aware of that, actually, so I need to be paying more attention. But that's very, very interesting. I've got a couple of quick ones that I'd like to fire at you rapid fire, Gary, and then I've got some questions that I've been stacking up that I think I'd like to bring Evans into the conversation, and some of the more kind of nuanced parts of the conversation. Couple of quick ones from Pedro Godinho. Pedro asks how to overcome slow network connections, especially these days when the majority of internet providers are overloaded with a large amount of people working remotely. Any tips? Of course, it's an excellent point. Thank you, Pedro. All of a sudden, everybody is online, and the internet is creaking at the seams. It's slowing down speeds everywhere, both on mobile networks and connected networks and Wi-Fi. Any tips on that? And the quick one, what kind of bandwidth are we looking at? What do we need to be able to use these kind of tools? And then any tips on how we overcome these challenges?
Right. Well, good video quality can be achieved with down to 300 or 400 kilobits per second of up and down bandwidth. So it doesn't require excessive bandwidth for some level of video quality and audio and video quality. However, there are a number of tools that can address that situation. You can load photos or freeze the frame when you're giving and receiving help, and often that's a very valuable tool, and those can reduce bandwidth. We also have the ability to load documents, so you can pull up a document that shows somebody 3 steps they're going to need to reset this, and guide them through using those tools, which again reduce the bandwidth requirements when you're either frozen or using documents and such. So there is some level of video required. In our case, we actually will dynamically adjust the frame rate and the video resolution based on the available bandwidth, so that you don't have to worry about that. You just initiate the call, and we'll automatically adjust based on the available bandwidth. But there are a number of tools that can help in those cases.
Okay, couple of very quick last ones to cover off for yourself, Gary. This one, before I read this question, I just do want to make a very clear announcement. This is not a sponsored session. Evans and Gary have given up their time. We're hosting these sessions for free. So, I've turned to these guys because I've known them for a long time and I've trusted their brand for a long time. That's not an endorsement. It's just saying, look, I trust their knowledge and expertise, and they were prepared to share this. However, this is a very pertinent question. Ray asks, how do you price your service? Is it tiered based upon features, and what's the actual US dollar pricing per month? You know, these are fundamental questions that we need to answer. I mean, what if you could help us, Gary, by giving us a broad understanding of course, your pricing tiers, but also how that compares. Like is that a sitting price in the market? Is there a range of costs for various providers? Because I have to be careful that it's not sponsored content.
Right, and I want to respect that this is, we're trying to provide general information that's useful to the market. Yep. So I'll focus purely on the general market and try to represent all the players in the market as well as I can. In general, the pricing is per user pricing, so you would pay based on the number of registered users you have. Sometimes there's some additional implementation or service fees, but that depends on the individual vendor. And the pricing ranges from, for obviously you have less feature-rich products that may be lower cost and more feature-rich products with more robust services capability that may be higher. But the prices are generally pretty reasonable per month, and it's the ROI can often be can be achieved within a matter of a short period of months for the purchase of the system. So they're most often a recurring revenue model with a per user fee per month or per year.
Okay, and just to add to that, you mentioned a little bit earlier, we can use the technology that's in our engineers' pockets already. I know there are solutions, and again, it's something that I've been talking about, the potential of smart glasses and hands-free working. But in terms of companies wanting to get themselves up and running right now, there's no additional investment required in any extra kit, as it were. It is a software solution that will run on an Android phone or iOS phone or tablet, whatever. Have I got that correct?
Right.
Yeah.
Yes, that's a great point. And that you can use the existing devices that you already have in your pocket. In addition, most of the vendors do support smart glasses, as do we. Help Lightning. You can smart glasses are currently available in the units available worldwide, or maybe in the hundreds of thousands, whereas these mobile phones that we have in our pockets are in the billions. So obviously, if you're looking at broad rollout use with your customers, you need to use the existing mobile first environment. If you're in a highly specialized environment where you're using something more constantly, more frequently, then smart glasses are maybe a valuable tool to use for remote expertise. Or if you're in environments where there's a safety concern or you need to be hands-free, you have to be able to have both hands-free for safety reasons, then those are great examples where smart glasses can be valuable.
Okay. But I mean, I've got a question here from Andreas Truman, who wants to again look at capex costs, etc. I mean, essentially, my understanding of this is that if you wanted to go out and take on smart glasses, etc., if that's something that's a requirement for your industry, as you point out, Gary, that's something that is there, but essentially, there's no essential need for a capex cost because it's mostly on a subscription-based model. Is that correct?
That's right. Yep. That's right. Yeah. For our service and for most of the players in this market, there's no capital cost required. Oftentimes, you can be up and running in days. We've had customers sign up and place their first calls the same day, provide business value the same day, and so it can be up and running very quickly. The software as a service model, where all you need is the existing mobile phones you have and a valid user name and password. You log in, you're up and running and ready to provide service.
Yeah. Okay. Andreas, I hope that kind of covered that for you. Obviously, in terms of like broad covering ideas of costs, I'm guessing the question there is how many engineers everybody has, and that becomes a much longer conversation. But it's a cost per user, so cost per engineer, cost per right. Exactly as your software as a service model, and that's true for the vast majority of solution providers in this space. So hopefully that gives you some ballpark understandings there, and you can kind of do some calculations based on how many people you have, and then connect either with the guys here or any of the providers and kind of get an understanding. But it is something that can be rolled out very, very quickly. Okay, Evans, let's bring you into the conversation. Gary, thanks as well for handling us, and please, feel free to chip in alongside this conversation as well. Excuse me. Evans, I've got a number of questions that I've kind of kept back for yourself here, but just before we kind of dive into some of those, can you just give me a bit of an understanding? Because as I said at the top, you've done this probably more than anyone else I know for sure, in terms of actually working alongside companies. I think it's something like 60 plus companies you've helped kind of not just implement the solution, but refine it and kind of maximize its value. Can you talk to me a little bit around the companies that you work, how they're using remote assistance, some of the best practices that you've seen in your experience, and just kind of give us a bit of an overview introduction to yourself and the work that you've been doing for the last couple of years, please.
Sure. Thanks, Chris. And thanks for having Gary and I today. You started by talking about how far back you and I go, and I was thinking, and you said we've met many times and chatted over coffee or a beer or a drink. And Chris, I think it's more over a beer and a drink than over coffee. But we do.
Yeah, I just didn't want to give your reputation away, Evans, but yeah, everyone knows my reputation.
We do go way back. But let me give you a little bit of my background and what I do specifically for Help Lightning is I'm in our customer success organization. I head up our coaching and consulting practice, and I work with our clients to help them do two things really. Adopt the technology, utilize the technology, that's one, and affect change management to help them drive adoption and get value from the solution. So I'm on the coaching and strategic side of our customer success organization. And to go back to your question, Chris, we really see, and Gary touched on this a little bit, we really see today three distinct use cases, how the majority of our customers are using remote expertise in their service organization. And one of them is technical support / customer service out to FSEs. Okay, so that's one of the use cases that our customers are focusing on. The second one, which Gary touched on, is technical support to the end user. Now that's critically important today with the COVID virus and COVID-19 and the coronavirus, because as Gary mentioned, we're seeing a lot of service organizations who simply can't dispatch today. I was on the call at 11:30 this morning prior to our call with one of our customers, has a very large field service organization that is not being allowed into customer sites anymore. I mean, that's a challenge, right? How do you get that piece of equipment up and running when you can't dispatch and get on site? So our technology and any remote expertise technology can be used from technical support / customer service right out to the end user. And the third use case, Chris, that we're really seeing is field service to field service. And everybody who's on this call probably realizes that we're in something now called the silver tsunami. We're seeing this massive wave of retirements that are impending, especially out in the field. Field service and service leaders are nervous about where are we going to find the next FSE, how are we going to retain them, how are we going to effectively train them, how can we take 30 years of Chris's knowledge and put it into 1 year of Evans's knowledge base effectively. So a lot of FSE to FSE, mentor to mentee training is going on through the use of remote expertise. And as Gary mentioned, instead of putting two guys on the truck, you just put one and you have someone remotely helping them out. So those are some of the use cases that we're seeing today.
Well, just a couple of quick points on that. Of course, one thing to bear in mind when we're putting one guy on the truck instead of two guys, the guy that's supporting the one guy on the truck can simultaneously be supporting what, 5, 6, 7, so there's a cost efficiency there. Also a time efficiency. Something that came up in this morning's call as well, which I think is worth referencing just alongside what you said there, Evans, is we're currently in the kind of the rapid response period. Most companies are in this rapid response period as we adapt. However, it won't be long before we move to a review period where we start to see, we're already seeing Italy, the curve is flattening, Germany, the curve is flattening, China, the curve is flattening. But that doesn't mean we're out of the woods. Even when we're all starting to get back to some semblance of reality, there's going to be a huge job, especially for those companies that are B2C. I'm thinking telcos, I'm thinking pay TV, anyone that's got to go into people's homes. There will be such a big backlog of work, and it's how do we cope with that. One of the things that I kind of put forward at the end of that call was, this is where the gig economy, and I've just written a white paper on the grown-up gig economy, which has just hit the subscriber base today. That is something that could be a game changer, the remote assistance. That third part, that engineer to engineer, applying that to the gig economy and utilizing some of the tools that are out there to get guys that are trained as engineers but don't have that experience. I think that's going to be very important as we move into phase 2. So sorry to cut in there. Just a thought that came to my mind.
It's interesting, Kris, to that point. Service delivery has been changed forever based on what's happened over the last 6 to 8 weeks. And there's no question about that. I'm talking to service executives on a daily basis, and although they're focused on the crisis and delivering service today, they also have an eye on service tomorrow. And whether tomorrow is actually tomorrow, it's 4 weeks from tomorrow, it's 4 months from tomorrow. Service delivery has changed, and out of every crisis comes something good. And you take a look at the value of expertise as it ties into service KPIs, and I think now about 55% of service organizations measure anywhere between 7 and 10 KPIs on an ongoing basis, and expertise has an impact on each one of them. You take a look at something like first-time fix rates, mean time to resolution, customer satisfaction and loyalty, call handle time, customer overall customer asset uptime. So I think what you said, Kris, is especially right. We've taken this technology as an industry and gone from a nice to have to an absolute necessity, and it will play out post this crisis.
Yeah, absolutely. And just before I move to some questions that I've kept aside for Evans, one thing I will say on that is when we're talking about these crucial KPIs, Evans has just listed a whole bunch of them. I did mention earlier that we've done some research on this. I should have mentioned, if anyone wants to find that research, it's very easy. It's research.fieldservicenews.com, and you'll find that information. Whilst we are in the rapid response, whilst we are still adapting, and obviously our focus is supporting everybody in terms of the current situation, it's important to keep an eye on what these things are, because like I said, the magnifying lens has been put on everything that is best practice. So it's worth heading over to research.fieldservicenews.com. You can find that research on those key KPIs that best in practice, best in class companies are using. Let me move on to some of the questions. I've got a couple of questions here from Jed. Now, those of you that joined us on the Friday call, remember Jed was on the panel with us and had some very good insight. So Jed, thank you very much for logging in today and for participating. Jed asks, well, Jed says he 100% agrees that camera and AI is solving more complex problems with customers saving calls. But what ideas do you have to help calm customers' concerns with regards to intrusion into their mobile phones and their security? In that sense, going back to that point of the third of those pillars that you mentioned, Evans, that third one, how do we kind of calm them down and say, look, we have to do this for you. We have to provide a solution. We can't get an engineer on site. You need to let us kind of help you in some way or another. Is there pushbacks that you've come across, Evans, in terms of security questions around that kind of area that again, it's opening up? There's always these questions around security at the moment, and the one good thing, the one opportunity that you pointed out was, we are seeing these best practices come to life. The bad thing is the walls are closing in certain areas. People are becoming more concerned around things like security. Have you got any comments on that, Evans?
Yeah, I'm going to defer the technical security question over to Gary, because he's information that he can share about the security of the technology. But I will tell you, from a strategic point of view, one of the ways to drive usage with the end customer is to have a clear value statement. So when you're talking to the customer and you're introducing this technology to them for the first time or the second time, you need to have a very clear value statement and a real benefit to them to take part in this remote expertise session. And what happens, Kris, is once they see the value, once they see that their equipment is up and working faster, that it's an easy and effortless experience, that there's not much friction in this, what we have is our customers asking them, instead of a traditional call into technical support, help lightning me, right? Let's go remote on this because it's easier for us. So that value proposition and that way that you brand it and market it to your customers is critically important to kind of break down walls of resistance. But Gary, I defer to you on any specs about security.
Well, sure. I think the most important thing is to make sure that you're disclose to your customers what you're doing and why you're doing it and how you're doing it, and give them options so that they can participate in that process. So, and I think GDPR is a great example of laws which give more visibility to consumers and to customers. So I think for us, it's important that we give options to customers. Some may not want to start face-to-face. They don't want their face to be seen. But if you're offering to fix their internet service, they may be perfectly happy with using the rear-facing camera and pointing it at the problem domain. So as long as you give people options, then I think then many of these problems can be overcome. When you're solving mission-critical problems, then privacy certainly becomes somewhat less important. But as long as you give consumers options and give them tell them what you're doing and why you're doing it. For us, we don't sell any of the information. You can turn recording off if you don't want to use recording. So we give options to customers so that they can be comfortable that we're solving their problem while respecting their privacy.
Yeah, I think I wrote a leader on this. I think it was in the October or November issue of Field Service News just gone. Where I said transparency is going to be one of the big buzzwords. It was actually the November issue because it was kind of building into the 2020 kind of what's coming up. Guess what? I didn't think it was going to be a global pandemic, but there we go. But I did say that transparency was going to be one of the big buzzwords of 2020, and I think it's for that very reason. It's kind of if you can say, look, this is what the left hand's doing, and don't worry, this is what the right hand's doing as well. There's no tricks here. This is how we operate. This is how it goes. You have various choices that you can opt into. You can take those choices. I think that does go quite a long way to allay in that. I've got another very quick one from Jed as well, which I think is a very good question. And I think this is pertinent to an awful lot of people on the call. In terms of workflow, can Help Lightning and other tools, is it possible to embed that into the ticketing system or the scheduling system, the FSM system, even the ERP, so that it can kind of be there, right? Engineer, okay, this is my job, this is my checklist, this is what I've done. Now I don't know what I'm doing. Bang, I can press a button. Can we bake it into our existing systems, I guess?
Yeah, so
either of you want to take that.
Yeah, so Gary, why don't you talk about the technological aspect of that, and then Kris, I'll give you a little bit of the importance of actually embedding it into the service process.
Yeah, please, Gary, first, please.
Yes, so we do have an integration API. Our particular product was built for integration. We recognize that reducing the friction of using these tools is incredibly important. Not only can we integrate into your field service management platform or your customer relationship management platform, but we also have an SDK that allows you to integrate it into your mobile apps. So we think we have that covered well. We have customers who are also white labeling our application, so they may want to promote it with their own brand. So our goal is to provide the tools that our customers need to support their customers.
Okay, yeah. And Evans, your point on that?
Yeah, and The most successful use of our technology in service organizations comes when they've embedded it into their service process. So this technology needs to be top of mind for the service organization. Adoption and utilization is a big challenge, right? It's software. It's not a software issue, it's a fleshware issue, meaning you have to get folks to adopt it, use it, and embed it into the service process. It's got to be a natural way in which you are now delivering service. And our most successful companies have actually taken the technology and embedded it somewhere along that service process. So let's say we're in a technical support call with a customer and we reach X amount of time, whether that be 10 minutes, an hour, all depends on the complexity and what you're fixing. But at one point you say, we haven't resolved this verbally. We're going to now launch into a remote expertise call to help you resolve it. So the more you put it into the service process and you put it into the way you're delivering service, the more successful you're going to be and the more successful your customer is going to be.
Yeah, I agree, and I can see that. I mean, even to the point, I remember doing a case study on a company, gosh, some time ago, who made the simplest change. This is not remote systems related, just basic FSM mobile app, but they made the simplest change of moving something from being 3 pages deep, that was something that was just getting overlooked, to putting it nice in front and center, and that UI testing it, just put it in there. If it's part of the workflow, if it makes the engineer's life easier, then it will work. So I absolutely agree with that, and I think obviously anything that makes the engineers' lives easier makes the customers happier. There's a point I want to follow up on that. I've got a question from Eric Van Groningen. Eric, good to see you again. Eric joined us on the earlier session with Jan as well. So Eric, thank you very much for taking the time to join us again. I hope you're finding these sessions useful. This is a fantastic question. Eric says, will field service technicians being the ambassadors of the company towards the client? And with that, the thrust of, sorry, I just need to go close because it's a long question. My eyesight's failing me in the dark. The thrust has commercial value. I'll put it into a bit more of a neater synopsis in my language. Sorry, Eric, I'm not as verbose as you, and I'm not as eloquent, but I'll put it in my humble Welsh slang. Basically, the thrust of Eric's question is the value of the human-to-human interaction is very, very important. This is something that I've written about quite a bit as well. In a world of digitalization, actually having somebody in front of you to talk to you and have that human interaction is very, very valuable. Do we lose something in the remote assistance world if we start doing that? And is there anything, Evans, that you could suggest can mitigate, can make it a more human experience, for one better way of saying it? Any thoughts on that, Evans?
Yeah, that's a great question, and it's actually one that's asked many times when we're first starting to implement this type of solution. The intent of remote expertise is not to get rid of the field service engineer, right?
Yeah.
Remote expertise is not for every service call. Some service calls simply cannot be solved remotely. You have to dispatch, okay?
Mm-hmm.
So my sense is you are never going to get rid of that interaction, that personal interaction, relationship that the trusted advisor, the field service engineer, has with the end customer. It's just not going to go away. That having been said, if the interaction is through remote expertise, Gary mentioned that we start every call face-to-face. So you still have that personal touch. It's face-to-face. You're remote, but it's as if you're there. So I agree. I think it's a great question. The intent is not to get rid of the field service engineer. The intent is really to be more effective in the way and efficient in the way you deliver service.
Okay, perfect. A very quick one. I think this may fall back to you, Gary, or Evans, whoever wants to take this. And guys, I'm looking at questions. We've got time for 2 questions which I have in. So before we close the session out today, what I will do is we'll get some further information for follow-ups, etc. If anyone has any questions that I haven't been able to kind of reach, or you haven't had a chance to submit as yet, first of all, thank you. It's been such a busy session, so thank you for keeping all the questions coming. If anyone has any remaining questions, I'll be leaving my contact details. We'll be putting information for you to reach out to these guys. I'll be putting links in the chat in a moment, so do hang on. But also we'll be sending out information as we do a follow-up as well. First question here: is there a one-to-many feature? I read that wrong. There's one too many features. No, is there a one-to-many feature? This is a question from Nathan Ives, and it's a very good one. So basically, Nathan's asking, can one person show many? A bit like what we're doing now, where subject matter expert can show something, then multiple people in multiple sites can view the session. So again, expanding that into that training session. Is there a way of doing that where maybe one engineer has got the hands on the on site, he's got the hands on the asset, a further engineer is coming in, maybe the more experienced guy that is able to put those hands in, as you described, Gary. Are other people able to view that? Either of you,
Sure.
if you want
Let me give an example of how that might be valuable. Suppose your second level support person is working on a problem resolution, and they realize that they really need the product expert. Or maybe they're responsible for the mechanical part of this product, but they realize that maybe electrical problem, they need to bring in the electrical expert. So those are common use cases, and our tool, a number of others, allow you to bring in a third party, an observer, who can assist in a broader collaboration. Obviously, there's also training use cases, as you described, that are also possible.
Okay, perfect. The final question we've got here. So this is from Anas Shah. So no, put my teeth in. Excuse me. It's been a long day. For those of you in the United States, it's come to the end of the day here, so it's been a long day. So I apologise. I know a scenario around machine training from one factory where the trainer trains from the shop floor, where multiple locations can view, or in a classroom setup. Is this something currently covered in the solution? So again, we're kind of touching on that. What's interesting that I'm seeing here, guys, and Evans, perhaps I'll give you the closing comments on here. I'm seeing a number of different thought processes, people coming out and saying, you know, how can we use this? How can we adapt this? How can we, what are the various use cases we have? I mean, from your point of view, Evans, as somebody that's probably fielded most of these questions and many others in the past and seen various different applications, where are the limits? Is it with regards to the technology, or is it with regards to just how we think about how we're going to implement this?
Yeah, so I have 3 millennials as children, and the limits of this technology are unbounded. It can be used for so many different things, and my millennial children always say to me, Dad, it could be used for that. We could use it for this. We could use it for that. From a consultative point of view, Kris, that's not a great way to approach this. What I always recommend is focus on one or two use cases where you're going to get the fastest value and the most return on your investment, because people see this and say, we could use it here, we could use it there, we could use it there. I understand that, but I always say focus on 1 or 2 use cases to kick the program off where you get value and impact in the shortest period of time. Then expand your use cases. Okay. But that's one of the best practices that I teach quite a bit.
Cool, perfect. Well, look, we're just coming up to the hour, so we have unfortunately hit time. I just want to do a little bit of housekeeping things, just say thank you to everybody that's taken part. So let me put some links out here. First of all, those of you that have come from our Field Service News family, great to see you all. If you've come from far and wide, which we're having a lot across these sessions, then you're very welcome to join our community and 30,000 of your peers, and subscribe to fieldservicenews.com. We've introduced a couple of new subscription tiers. There is a sponsored subscription option, which is complimentary, so you can get access to everything. You don't have to pay for that, but occasionally we'll have sponsored content, and your data may be shared with people there. Alternatively, if you don't like the sound of that, we have paid for subscriptions that you can utilize, and we even have a VIP tier where we will be hosting regular calls after this impact and throughout, but we'll be hosting regular best practice calls, and there's a community dedicated to it. Also, for those of you who want to follow up with Evans and Gary, I'm going to put a link to their links as well. I've just noticed that, Andreas, I've just sent you and only you the link to the subscription option. So I'm just sending that as well to everybody. My apologies. I've also sent the link out to Help Lightning there as well. And let's just get the email is info@Help Lightning if you want to reach out to the guys there, because obviously, as you can imagine, these guys are phenomenally busy at the minute. So if you hit the info at, it means that the entire team that's working with Evans and Gary, there's a bigger chance of getting a quicker response. So the advice is hit the generic shared inbox, because that's the one that's going to get you the quickest response. But other than that, gentlemen, thank you so much. It's been a fantastic session. I'd really like to thank you from the bottom of my heart for taking the time to take part today. Thank you everybody that has joined us on this call as well. Considering you guys only got a heads up on this within 24 hours, it's been a phenomenal response. Great for you all to take part. I've got the next session that is in this support channel for helping people with dealing with the COVID-19, helping field service organizations to work through this, and like we say, not just work through it, but come out of it stronger. The next session is with Harold Wasserman, who's also on the panel with Gary and I on Friday, and Nick Frank, a good friend of mine and one of the smartest guys I know in the market. And again, Harold has been working hands-on with a lot of companies, so it's going to be more of a hands-on, practical session in terms of understanding how field service organizations are operating. We'll be interspersing some of the practical kind of practitioner sessions with deep dives into technology like we've done today. So that's coming up on Friday. If you're at fieldservicenews.com, if you're a subscriber, you'll get a notification on that. If not, keep your eyes on the social media channels. Anyway, thank you all for joining us. Evans, thank you. Gary, thank you. The wider audience, thank you all, and we shall see you all again soon. Take care.
Thank you, Kris.